sweatshirt from a friend named Greg. So it is a sweatshirt from a singer-songwriter named Kevin Devine, I believe. I will be very honest, I haven't listened to a lot of his music, but my friend bought the sweatshirt in the wrong size and then sent me the wrong size and it fits me. The shirt says, sift through the noise, find a simpler sound, or something like that. This is a really small little area that I'm in, aka a closet, so it's hard for me to like move around and read it. Either way, it's talking about sound, which is why we're all here, right? So, anyway, the case that I covered a couple weeks ago was actually multiple cases that took place in Skidmore, Missouri. The case I want to revisit today is that of Lisa Montgomery. So, if you don't remember, Lisa Montgomery was the woman who murdered Bobby Joe Stinnett. She murdered Bobby Joe and then cut Bobby Joe's baby out of her. The baby survived. Lisa Montgomery was arrested the next day. I believe after a very short trial, she was sentenced to death. So, she was executed on the 13th of January. She was pronounced dead at 1:31 a.m. The reason I wanted to revisit this case is because the last time I talked about her, the video that I did, I told you guys that a jury had held off on her execution. I believe she was supposed to be executed December 10th, but both of her lawyers got COVID-19, so they put it off because her lawyers were trying to get her execution commuted to a life sentence because Lisa Montgomery has brain damage, or had brain damage, and multiple mental health diagnoses that her lawyers believed would make her ineligible for the death sentence or for execution. Unfortunately, her lawyers were not able to make a strong enough case, and Lisa ended up being executed. She was the first woman to be executed by the federal government since 1953, 67 years ago, I believe. She was the only woman on death row. She was the 11th federal death row inmate to be executed by the Trump administration after a 17-year hiatus in federal executions. So for 17 years, no one was executed by the federal government until the Trump administration, and they have allowed 11 federal executions. This is not a political video, and please don't take anything that I am talking about to mean that I don't believe that Lisa Montgomery committed a horrific crime. A mother lost a daughter lost a mother, a family lost somebody in a horrific way. But I just kind of want to talk about the situation or the case that her lawyers were trying to make to stay her execution, and honestly this execution did not sexual abuse and torture that she suffered at the hands of her guardians and partner. As a child, she was routinely sexually and physically abused by her father and actually trafficked by her mother. Her treatment was so violent that it amounted to torture, is the argument that her lawyers were making. Her mother's name was Judy Shaughnessy. I believe I'm saying that correctly. It's Shaughnessyy. So her defense team believed that at the time of her crime, Montgomery was psychotic and out of touch with reality. And that opinion is supported by 41 current and former lawyers, as well as human rights groups like the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. Our lawyers were hoping to delay her execution until Joe Biden takes office, hoping that he would be more lenient on the execution and would be able to commute it to a life sentence. So since I'm going to read kind of from a couple news articles that I read, and then on Patreon I'm going to read some court documents that her lawyers presented to the court, I guess, because I find those to be interesting. Since 2008, Montgomery had been held in a federal prison in Texas for female inmates with special needs, where she was receiving psychiatric care. Since receiving her execution date, she'd been placed on that the men, telling him what the men were doing to her. The cousin, who was a sheriff's deputy, confessed that he didn't do anything when he was told about this. And he actually ended up dropping her back off at home after she confessed this to him. So she basically had no adult or anyone that she could trust in her life, which is extremely heartbreaking to me just to think about how she must have felt, or if she would even allow herself to be present in her body after suffering all the trauma that she suffered. So, Kelly Henry, the lawyer, says that one of the things that disturbs her the most is that adults in positions of authority were told about what was going on but did nothing. When Lisa's mother eventually split from her second husband, she and Lisa testified in divorce proceedings You have